So, how would you like to live forever? Sounds good, doesn't it? I mean, we know that Jesus is going to come back. He's going to give us a new body. But what if people could figure out a way to keep this body ticking a little bit longer? Should we? If we could? Well, it's an interesting question that we all have to deal with. According to the Bible, a man's years are 70 years, and if by reason of strength, 80. That seems to be the general lifetime that we have. It seem to have a maximum of about 120. That's kind of what the Bible seems to suggest. It's not really firm on how long you can live, but that's what people usually make it to. In fact, if you look at statistics, most people just don't make it really beyond 80, at least statistically by country, if you look at it at that level. Of course, you always have, some people that make it beyond, but you have some people that die in their 60s or they die in their 70s just of old age, right? And that seems to be what is actually going on. And yet, there's maybe a new way to turn that around. The purging of body of retired cells could reverse aging, a study shows. This is according to theguardian.com. You can check that out there. Findings raise a possibility that a future therapy that rids the body of senescent cells might protect against the ravages of old age. So purging retired cells from the body has been shown to undo the ravages of old age in a study that raises the prospect of new life-extending treatments. When mice were treated with a substance designed to sweep away cells that have entered a dormant state due to DNA damage, their fur regrew, kidney function improved, and they were able to run twice as far as untreated elderly animals. The team are now assessing whether the mice also live longer and are planning a series of safety studies in humans with the ultimate goal of testing whether getting rid of so-called senescent cells could help reverse a range of age-related disorders. The discovery adds to a wave of new findings, hinting at the possibility of a future in which doctors can treat aging itself rather than trying to combat the host of diseases that come along with it. Such a scenario is now supported by science, according to Peter de Kizier, the 36-year-old scientist who led the latest work at Erasmus University Medical Center in the Netherlands. Maybe when you get to 65, you'll go every 5 years for your anti-senescent shot in the clinic. You'll go for your rejuvenation shot, he said. That I can envision when we reach that age. Interesting. As we age, our cells accumulate DNA damage. All right, this makes perfect sense, right? That we keep making copies of copies, and every time you make a copy of a copy, there is always data loss. This is just one of the fundamental laws of nature, is that we have data loss. Doesn't matter what kind of copy you're making, but there's always data loss. And so he says there's DNA damage which beyond a certain threshold cannot be repaired. At this point, cells can either turn cancerous, self-destruct, or enter a semi-dormant state called senescence. Initially, senescent cells were thought to be neutral bystanders that no longer make a useful biological contribution, but that are harmless. However, about a decade ago, this picture began to change. It was found that these senescent cells secrete a whole load of junk, and they're not just bystanders. They have a negative effect, said Dr. Kieser. He compares these cells to the toxic presence of a disruptive student in the classroom who drags down the performance of their neighbors. There is now growing evidence for the role of senescent cells in age-related diseases, with higher concentrations of the cells being seen in arthritic joints, cataracts, and the plaque-lined arteries. Research published last year showed that removing the cells using a genetic trick causing mice to live 20% longer on average. The latest paper is the first to show that aging can not only be delayed by removing senescent cells, but potentially reversed. In the study published in the journal Cell, scientists used a compound designed to knock senescent cells out of their state of suspended animation towards cell death. Two mouse populations, naturally aged mice, and one's genetically engineered to age rapidly, were given infusions of the peptide 3 times a week for 10 months. Initially, the scientists planned to simply assess kidney function, but a laboratory technician pointed out that some of the balding mice had undergone a remarkable physical transformation. The technician said, "Look, Peter, the mice have regrown their hair. We've never seen that before," said Dr. Kizier. The animals' sluggish disposition also changed, and they started moving around more and exploring their cages. Fast-aging mice with patches of missing fur began to recover their coats after 10 days, and after about 3 weeks, The fitness benefits began to show, with older mice running double the distance of their counterparts who did not receive the anti-senescent treatment. A month after treatment, aged mice showed an increase in markers indicating healthy kidney function. Well, I can see at the very least this might be something that guys who are balding might really enjoy, at least to get their hair back, right? That's one possibility. But again, should we do this if we could do it? Is there a biblical reason that says that we cannot do that? That's really the big question. I'm not really sure. I think we should do as much as we can to live as long as we can, to be as healthy as we can. But if you take out these cells, is that a bad thing? I don't see this as genetic transformation. They're not actually changing your source code, but you're getting rid of the source code that's gone bad, and they're getting rid of that. It's an interesting question. We'll have to keep thinking about this to really consider where this ought to go. The finding raised a possibility that therapy that rids the body of senescent cells might protect against the ravages of old age. But many more tests will be needed before scientists know if drugs can be developed to help people live longer. Questions remain about the limitations of the technique. At some stage, presumably, the body would come up against the problem that not all tissues can be regenerated, meaning that fewer cells would be left. My fear was that taking out cells, the mice would just implode, Kaiser said, adding that while he found no evidence that the mice had begun to shrink, this might become an issue beyond some threshold. The team planned to carry out a safety clinical trial in people with an aggressive form of brain tumor called glioblastoma multiforme, in which cells happen to feature a similar marker to those in senescent cells, making the peptide a possible treatment for this form of cancer. Juan Carlos Izbizua Belmonte, a scientist at the Salk Institute in La Jolla, California, who recently published a separate study hinting that aging might be reversible, described the latest work as superb. I think approaches aiming at the elimination of senescent cells will probably be in clinical trial in the next few years. Peptides such as this one are almost ready to go in the clinical trials. So interesting stuff. This does raise some interesting and challenging questions for those of us who believe in God, in the Bible, and that we are going to have a new body one day. Now, again, we know that people in ancient times lived a very long time. So there's nothing biblically wrong with living to be 900 years old. All right? I mean, I don't think we're going to get that old anytime soon, but what if we could make it to 130 or 150 or 170 or even 200 years old? Would that be wrong? That's something you're going to have to wrestle with. Look in Scripture, see if you can find something. Put something in the comment section there, and we can discuss this. I honestly don't know the answer. I don't have the answer. What I see as being dangerous when it comes to the mark of the beast is when we actually take our DNA and we add basically Satan's DNA to the mix. I think that's a very, very bad idea. Or when we start mixing our DNA with animals, I think that's a very bad idea. I think it's absolutely anti-biblical to do that. But here, where we're just finding something, or, of course, these scientists are finding something, and they're removing that so that it can no longer bring the rest of the cells down, that is an interesting question. Something we'll have to wrestle with. Leave some comments there in the comments section. If you haven't already subscribed, I'd encourage you to do that. Also, click on the little bell, and that way you'll make sure to get notified when new videos come out. Until next time, guys, stay in the Word.